Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. This is going to be a little bit of a different discussion, and it's going to be, we're talking about a little different knife than I normally have here. So what we have here is the Spyderco Bow River. It's a Phil Wilson design, and a beautiful design, I might add. Very, very budget friendly, and because of those two things, Phil Wilson and budget friendly, this has been fairly popular. Now, I do want to clarify one important point, and that is, as we consider this, and as I kind of take you through it as a reviewer, we have to keep in the back of our minds that this is doing something a little different. Okay, so they market this as a general use outdoor knife, which is true, but they don't mean it the way sometimes we think about it. Okay, so often when we think of an outdoor knife, we kind of slot the word like survival, bushcraft, all that kind of stuff in there. And I wouldn't call this a survival knife or a bushcraft knife. It's an outdoor use knife in the sense of, you're processing game, you're cutting up food at camp, you're filleting fish, that kind of stuff. It's that kind of outdoor use cutting tool, more so than survival or bushcrafting or something like that. That doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean we shouldn't like it or care about it. It just means we've got to judge it a little bit differently, okay? So for example, the very fine point here means, you go pounding on this with a baton and you're going to have issues right away. Well, does that mean the knife is no good? No. Okay, so I wanted to get into that introduction a little bit before we start talking about this knife, because I don't want to reiterate that point over and over again. That way I can just say it once and move on. So now we can get into the knife. The first thing I've got to say, very lightweight, very easy to carry. 5.5 ounces total with the sheath, which is excellent. Overall, within the sheath, it's about 8 3/4 inches. Now, I don't know that that's going to matter that much because you're going to put this on a belt anyway, I assume, but maybe you got a pocket on your backpack for it. You need to know how big it is. Just to give you an idea of how light that is for this whole setup, Ontario Wrap Model 1, 5.5 ounces. Okay, all of this, 5.5 ounces. So that should give you a decent reference point to understand why I'm pretty impressed by that. All right, moving on to the size of the knife itself. Get this out of the way. We'll talk about the sheath in a minute when we get to that portion of the review, but the knife itself is 8 1/8 inches overall. We've got 4 inches of grip area here, and I'm saying that first because the handle, as you can see, it's sort of doing that Bradford Guardian thing where it includes part of the blade in your grip area. So the handle itself is only like 3 and I wrote it down here somewhere, 3 3/4. But the grip area is intended to kind of come up onto the blade, okay? Blade length is also going to be a little misleading because of that. So the blade length is 4 3/8, but again, most of that, or I mean, not all of that is cutting edge. So you're losing about up to here. And so the cutting edge is actually 3 3/4 inches. All right, now we've got the specs out of the way. I just wanted to make sure, there's a couple odd things here. So I've got to want to make sure that's all sort of clear enough. All right, now let's get into this blade just for a couple of minutes. It's a fairly simple blade, and you could almost, and actually I have, you could almost consider this a kitchen knife. And actually for most of the time that I was reviewing this knife and playing with it, I did have it in the kitchen doing food prep stuff, and it works really, really well for that. So if you want just a decent sort of paring, cutting, processing knife for your kitchen, this is not a bad option for 30 bucks, okay? Especially I found, that thin little tip there was great for, cutting the cores out of an apple or anything where you've got to do a lot of turning. That very thin tip, is kind of very navigable through whatever material you happen to be cutting on. All right, now being an upswept tip like that, all right, this is, that's kind of, again, giving you some clues about how this knife is going to be used. So I found myself using it a lot in this kind of a grip. All right, getting my finger up here, or even in this kind of a grip, getting my thumb way up here for very fine, detailed type of stuff. And as an outdoor, game processing type knife, that's perfectly suited for what it's trying to be. Now, it is 8CR13 MOV, so it's fairly stainless, but it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to, let's say, take this fishing and just chuck it back in the sheath when you're done and forget about it. If you do, I mean, you can do that, but you're going to have problems with corrosion. Okay, the other thing is in 8CR13 MOV, one, the price is quite affordable, and two, this is going to be fairly easily sharpenable. Now, if you're running into a lot of bones and really, being rough with this, it's not going to hold an edge as well as not going to hold an edge as well as some other knives. However, if you know, most of the hunters that I've been with, you know, the knife that they got is it's some cheap surgical steel. They got it in a set from Cabela's or Bass Pro or Canadian Tire, and it doesn't hold an edge anyway. So HCR 13 is still going to be better than a lot of those knives, except for this one thing. This is not a flexible blade, not at all. Okay, it's actually very stiff. So a lot of times for a fillet knife or a boning knife, you'll want a bit of flexibility, and this is not going to deliver that, okay? So just wanted to put that out there in case you're rushing to buy one. Now, do I think it can still be useful? Absolutely, no question at all. And here's the thing, because of the price and because of the lightweight, there's no reason why a knife with this purpose, right, to borrow a nut and fancy term, this philosophy of use cannot be part of your system, right? It doesn't weigh anything, so it's not as if, you know, you can't still have, you know, your larger, heavier knife for cutting through joints or your bone saw or whatever else you've got and have this for the finer detailed work, okay? I think it's completely appropriate to include this in your, you know, in your camping setup or, you know, hunting setup. All right. Totally worthwhile as far as I'm concerned from a cost standpoint and from a weight standpoint. So now that we've gotten the blade out of the way, let's move on to the handle. And I've got to say this, the handle is beautiful. Look at that layered G10, absolutely fantastic. If nothing else, you have to give Spyderco a lot of credit for getting this handle so right, and they really have gotten that part of it right. Now, it's very comfortable in hand, nice and round. Certainly seems to have some influence from bushcrafting type handles. However, I've got to reiterate, I wouldn't call this a great bushcrafting knife, especially because of the way this whole portion up here works. So in a hammer grip, there's just barely enough room and there's not much up here. So watch, if in a hammer grip, even when I pull pretty tightly, I can get a lot of movement there. So a larger, girthier knife won't do that. All right. So the alternative, and this is how I've often held this knife, is like this, right? Or even like this. But now you've got a couple of hot spots here. So cutting meat, perfect. Cutting an apple, perfect. Any kind of kitchen task, this is great. However, getting into some really heavy, you know, if let's say I'm doing carving like this, well, you know, you're pushing pretty hard, or at least often we are, and that gets pretty uncomfortable pretty quickly. So again, to reiterate, and that's outside of the realm of expectation for this knife, but I just wanted to kind of make that point in terms of ergonomics. It's great for what it's intended for. It's not ideal for stretching it outside of that intended use. All right. Okay, so comparisons. What are we going to... Oh, sheath. Sorry, guys. I'm forgetting about the sheath altogether. So the sheath is just a bent-over leather sheath, little belt loop here. I have to say retention is very good. The only issue, every once in a while, you have to reset because that upswept tip will start to hook on the back here. Okay, but retention is good. You know, you can carry this with quite a lot of confidence and not have to worry about it. So I'm impressed by that. And I haven't done anything to this sheath. I haven't wetted it and tried to mold it or form it or anything like that. I've just sort of thrown it in a bag and used it. Okay, you may want to do that if you're going to be, you know, taking this on, you know, tons and tons of camping trips. And the other thing is you're going to have to pay attention a little bit to blade care as well if you're going to be using this all the time. For me, it's sat mostly, honestly, in my kitchen because I just found it a great food prep knife, and I stand by that. All right. So I don't have any kitchen knives to compare this to, but I think it would compare well to most people's kitchen knives. And that's where we're going to go with comparison after just saying the sheath is fine for its intended use. All right. It's not an EDC knife. It's not a survival knife. It's a nice carry knife for processing game and food. And for that role, the sheath is totally fine. Now, comparisons. This is a tougher part of the discussion. I do have, from a number of years ago, this SOG I bought. This was when I was sort of first getting into knives, and I still actually don't hate this knife. It's not the most comfortable thing I've had, but it is, and it's specifically designed for skinning. I think I have reviewed this knife on the channel, but this would be, you know, definitely a competitor. I think these go for about 40 bucks. This guy goes for about 30 bucks. Similar idea on the Sheath, just a fairly budget-friendly leather sheath. Which one would you rather? Probably depends a little bit on your preferences and exactly what you're doing, but both of these are pretty decent options. Probably initial skinning, I might like this one, and then finishing stuff, I might like this one. Budget-friendly stuff with leather sheaths. We've got this QSP. We don't want to forget about that. Great knife, N690 steel. Very, very comfortable in hand. This is going to be a little more versatile. This you could do some bushcrafting stuff with. You could baton lightly with this, that kind of stuff, where this guy, not so much. However, this is going to suffer a little bit on the food prep side because of the extra thickness on that blade. Now, some obvious comparisons. Let's pull out a Mora companion here since, the price point is similar, Mora Bushcraft Black. I've already made the point, and I would reiterate that point, guys. This is not a bushcrafting knife. These are definitely more designed for that. And here's where I want to sort of make this supplemental point, okay? I can absolutely see the value in taking something like this with you alongside this, allowing this to be sort of the heavier duty knife that you're working on wood and setting up, various bushcrafting tasks with. This guy is going to be doing your food prep and stuff like that. Because honestly, I have cut up a few apples with these Moras, and they're not good for food prep, right? The wedge effect is a little too abrupt, and so they tend to act like a splitting maul rather than a cutting tool in that particular application. And so that's where this kind of knife really, really shines. Let's get these guys out of the way. The last knife that I want to bring in is an example of a different idea. Now, it does do a similar thing where it uses part of the blade for the handle. This is a slightly different approach, okay? This knife is more versatile, okay? So can it do most of what this knife can do? Yeah, it can. Does it do it quite as well? Maybe not quite as well, but so close you'd be hard-pressed to notice a difference. And so something like this is going to get my attention and my admiration a little bit more because of the versatility of it. Can I do some outdoor bushcrafting stuff with this? Yes, I can. Can I do some tactical stuff with this? Yes, I can. Can I do some food prep with this? Yes, I can. Where this is a little more use specific. All right. So, by the way, there's quite a significant difference in price there that's worth taking note of. All right, so what are my overall thoughts on the Spyderco Bow River? Well, the first thing I have to say is beautiful knife, very, very easy on the budget, and very nice as a cutting tool. And I've got to say, around my house, okay, this is a go-to. I've used this a lot, and when I'm getting ready to prepare supper, I would never go and pick this up and bring it over to the counter to start preparing whatever I'm cooking that day. I would take this over and over again. It's really, really nice as a kitchen knife, okay? And for anything similar that you're going to be doing while camping, it's fantastic. And for that reason, I think this is a great knife at a very, very budget-friendly price. Furthermore, because it's cheap and because it's light, I think it's completely appropriate to carry something like this in your pack or with you on your belt alongside, something like this, or maybe something bigger. Maybe you're carrying a Lion Steel T5, or you're carrying a BK9 or a BK2 or something like that. Maybe you're carrying an axe and a saw and a survival knife, and can you add this to the mix to do your camp chores and getting food prep at the fire and stuff like that? I think it makes perfect sense to do that exact thing. The only challenger, I would say, is there are knives like this out there, folding knives like this guy or this guy that could serve a very similar purpose and just drop in your pocket, okay? So that's about the only sort of challenge to the overall point that I've been making that I think you could reasonably bring up. So, do I like it? Do I recommend it? Yeah, I absolutely do. It's very affordable. It's very useful. I think this is a great little knife, not to mention absolutely beautiful, right? This is this knife, if you have this in your kitchen and you're using it, uh, look how beautiful and how much joy, at least for me, I absolutely love using this and putting it to work when I'm getting supper ready. And it's a lot more satisfying, if you will, than just pulling any plain old knife out of my knife block to use. So there you go, guys. That's my take on the Spyderco Bow River. Uh, I will put a link to DLT Trading. I did see these over there. I'm not sure if they're still in stock, but DLT Trading, I don't give them enough attention. I do have a great relationship with them, and if you use my link, it does help the channel a ton. So whether it's to buy this or any number of other things, they have a bunch of stuff on there, and they had a bunch of great prices on ZTs. I don't know if that's still going on, but if it is, it's worth taking a look at. So there you go. Use that link. It does help the channel. Thanks a lot. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.